honestly, it got to the point where all I was really excited for was Esther. That's what I wanted to do. Like Esther, I wanted to go see Esther, and I knew it was gonna be good. I just knew, like, my expectations were it was gonna be amazing and beautiful, visually beautiful. The songs are gonna be beautiful. The people are gonna be beautiful. Like everybody, like everything's gonna be amazing. And thankfully it was. The musical was so good, so incredible. Like, oh, like my second favorite Sight and Sound Theatre musical, and visually wise, like 11 out of 10. Just absolutely gorgeous. So pretty. Esther, if you do not know, is, or Queen Esther, that's what the title is, Queen Esther. It is an adaptation of the book in the Bible titled Esther. So the story doesn't really deviate too much from the actual book. Of course, they have to take liberties because it is an adaptation, and it's in the limitations of a musical. So on stage, so there's some points where it's like, okay, we don't know how to show this, or we don't know how to get that into the story within 3 hours of the musical, so we're just gonna have to take that out, or we're gonna have to put something else in, or like whatever. So, but pretty much they stuck with the story almost to a T, so that's impressive. The only thing that was very like new was they had Ezra, the Bible character in it. He was a scribe in the musical, and basically he helped Mordecai keep up to tabs with Esther while she's in the palace. And he's a pretty prominent character throughout the entire musical from Act 1 to Act 2. And I do need to say that I haven't read the Book of Esther in a couple years. So I didn't realize how good the story was until when I went to go see the musical. There's a lot of times where I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? What's the next thing? What's the next plot twist? What's this character going to do? Like, I genuinely could not remember. So it made me realize how good of a story Esther is, how much tension there is, and so many great relationship dynamics and great characters, great villains and heroes. Like, there's so much happening in the Book of Esther, and I don't think you realize how good of a story Esther is until you literally see it live. Like, you're like, wow, like there's so much going on. There's so many good plot points that you just would not expect unless maybe you just saw it before your eyes. The acting was, as always, great. Like, the girl that played Esther, you could just tell was just on fire for the part. All of the characters from Haman to Ezra to Mordecai to the king, like they all did their part so well. All the side characters that were in there did their part great. The chorus, like, just created the atmosphere of the setting of Esther so great. Myself and my friends, like, we were sitting on the third row in the audience and the seating, and so literally we're like surrounded by the entire stage, and so it felt like you were like in the middle of it. So while the main story is happening, there's also all of these other like background characters that are doing kind of their own thing, their own story. So if you just for some reason did not want to watch Esther and Mordecai have their conversation in their house, you can just like look over here and watch a mother talking to her child, about like grabbing some food or something. Like, I don't know, like like there was just so much happening, and there was animals everywhere too, that were walking around with their person, and like, so they were doing stuff. Like, it just felt so atmospheric. It like really like drew you in to the story. And even if you're not looking at whoever's talking at the moment, you can still hear them on their side of the stage, so you know where it's at. It kind of felt like a open world video game almost. The only time where I don't think the acting is that great is when, unfortunately, there's a child actor. I don't think their children actors are that great. That's just a personal thing. Half of the time I feel like the kids are just saying their lines, not really even acting them. And then when they sing, half the time, they're extremely off key. Oh, that's terrible to say. There's no like main children characters in Esther, so there was no issues with that. It was all adults, and they all did great. Especially their singing. Oh my gosh. The singing in this musical, I'm pretty sure I got chills like 3 times in this musical. Like oh my gosh, like. One thing that was very interesting was they had Haman's wife have a pretty, not like a big part of the musical, but she definitely helped with Haman's plot in the story. And in the Bible, I can't remember, but in the Bible, she does help Haman with his plot, if I'm correct. But she had kind of a more prominent part in the story. And she even had a song. Like, it was like, I just didn't expect that. There's this one song where they have 4 women have some singing parts, and they kind of overlap each other. And it was like Esther, the king's mother, and Haman's wife, and then another woman. I think she was just like kind of a mother figure to Esther for the story. I don't think that's in the Bible anywhere. It's just kind of put in there, I guess, to help with Esther's character development. And that's another thing too, is that they not only was Haman's wife have a part in the story, but also the king's mother was there as well. She had quite a few scenes and quite a few lines and lyrics. Like she was in there kind of weaving in and out of the story a lot. And I don't remember her really being in the book of Esther. I thought the king's parents were not alive at that point. But she also was in the story a lot, and I guess it's just to show that the king does have a human side, that he has someone that truly does love and care for him, and that's why they gave her a bigger role in the musical. But it was kind of a surprise, but I liked it. And of course, like you, like me, if you haven't read the book in a while, in a couple of years, you're like, wait, was that character actually a thing? Was that character in the book of Esther, or did this event actually happen? Like, I can't remember, so I have to go back and read Esther again to make sure what was real and what was not real. The choreography was great. There was a couple of group numbers that were just a lot of fun, in my opinion. The Jews had a lot of great group numbers with Mordecai that I just thought was very powerful. There's a song right before Act 1 ends that I just thought was just a very powerful number, because it's when Mordecai and the Jews hear about Haman being put into power, and they're like, oh my goodness, what do we do? Like, he is the enemy. Like, he is the enemy of the Jews. Like, what do we do in this situation? And so they have like a song about that, and I just thought the choreography was great. There's also the choreography of Esther and all the other girls that are taken into the palace that have this whole dance number of being chosen to potentially be the wife of the king. And so there's a great dance number and song number with that. I was kind of sad that majority of the songs were not full-length songs. Like, genuinely, majority of the songs were like half songs or quarter-long songs. Like, a character would be talking, and then they would sing for like 2 lyrics, and then we would go on to the next scene. It just felt like there was no time to like sit there and like sing a ballad, you know? Like Esther, because she is the main character and the title character of Queen Esther the musical, like she does not have a solo song. She does not have a ballad anywhere. Now, yes, she does sing. She does have some portions where she sings for a little bit, but usually she would get cut off by another character singing or by scene that's coming in. Like, she doesn't have like this moment of like the spotlight's on her and we just get to hear her thoughts and her wants. I think almost every single Sight and Sound Theatre musical, at least the main character has one solo song at least in their musical, and Esther did not really have that. Like, I wanted like a full length like Esther song, like a good woman like ballad song, and she didn't have that. But like all the other characters too, Like there wasn't really a villain song for Haman. There were like great group number songs, but I don't think they were like to their full potential half the time. I feel like they would get cut off and then they would just kind of move on to the next scene. There were some songs that were great that I was like, huh, I never thought I would want a song like that. Like again, like the 4-woman song, Esther, the king's mother, Haman's wife, and the other woman. Like, I thought that was a really cool song. And all the songs that were there were awesome. I really liked them. It just did not feel like a musical to me. It did not feel like a true musical because of how cut off the songs were. But I do see why they did that, because also the stage, the story is constantly moving. They're constantly like going on to the next scene, whether it's the choreography with the people and the animals, or whether it's like actual sets like buildings or curtains or something, or props. Like they're constantly moving things to keep the story going along. Like a huge choreography is happening throughout Act 1 and Act 2. And I think they did the songs the way they did to keep the story going forward and to never stop. Maybe it was it felt like it was purposeful. Like there was a reason they did that. That's why I said it's not a big deal that this is kind of like my only thing that I was like, about, because I think I understand why they did it, and they did it well. So it's just a me thing. And let's talk about the sets, because oh my gosh, like the visuals of this musical was 11 out of 10. Like I've never seen anything so beautiful. The set was so visually appealing. Like the castle and the buildings, and the props and the furniture pieces were just so gorgeous. Like everything was so visually amazing to look at. Like you can look at from the corner of the stage all the way around. Like everything was thought out so well. And the lighting, like oh my gosh, the lighting was so pretty. And they had a very clear color theme of what they were going for. They had tons of purple and pink everywhere, and gold and yellows. And then whenever like Haman would come into the picture, it was like red, like obvious red. They were very clear about their intentions of what these colors, these lighting colors represented. And just talking about colors, oh my gosh, the costumes. Whoever was the costume designer is incredible. Every single costume from every single character was so gorgeous. Men and women, like all their costumes were so beautiful. And there was like a lot of sparkle too. There was a lot of shine. There was sparkles everywhere going on. But like Esther, man, that actress has like so many pretty dresses. Like every time she walked on stage, there was like another beautiful dress. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop looking. But it got to the point where I thought everything was too beautiful. You know what I mean? That's terrible. It was too beautiful. Like when Mordecai and the Jews, when they realized that they're gonna get killed because of the new law, they have to they have to put on ashes and dirt and throw themselves. I forgot what they're called, but basically they're in mourning, so they have to like take off their nice clothes and put on dirty old ones, to represent grief and mourning and crying out to the Lord that they'll give him mercy. And I mean, they did do that. Like, there's one part where Mordecai literally just rips out his shirt, like just rips the fabric off, and that was I wasn't expecting that. And he puts on like these dirty brown looking robes, and all the Jews are doing that too, and it didn't look dirty enough. It didn't look like they were in mourning. It just looked like a pretty version of grief, of sorrow. I'm not sure. It just wasn't I just didn't buy it. That's what I'm saying. I didn't buy the grief part because of the costuming. But I mean, if they wanted to go with everything else being aesthetically pleasing, then they did great, because all the Jews looked great in their mourning costumes. They looked awesome. So that's what they're going for. Great. And the props were beautiful. The animals are great. Like all the time, every single musical, everyone's always so surprised by the animals. Like they all, it's not normal to see a camel, you know what I mean? Also, elephants. So there's a little baby elephant and a big elephant, and they appear, I think, once or twice in the show. And I genuinely thought they were real for a second. They look so real. But when you look closer, and especially since we were closer to the stage, like you could tell that they were like, okay, like those look like puppets or some type of machinery to make the elephant and baby elephant look very real. But they did a great job because the body movements of these elephants, I mean, I've never seen an elephant in real life. Well, that's not true. I saw some at the zoo, so that's not really true. But I've never seen an elephant just roam freely, but they looked real to me. The body movements were great. That was really cool. But speaking of like visually appealing and making things so real and so raw, I loved how they positioned their actors on stage. There would be several times where they would position their actors in almost like a parallel positions on stage. Like, for example, you would have, I can't particularly think of examples, but maybe you would have like Esther right in the middle on top of the castle. Well, on two sides of the other stage, you would have Esther's motherly figure character over here, and then you would have Haman's wife over here, and they would literally parallel each other. And you would have Esther right in the middle of the stage on top of the castle. Like it's like really cool. Like for my brain, for some reason, I'm like, okay, there's a story there. Why did they position those characters like that? Or you would have like the king like on the floor of the stage, center, and then you would have Haman and Mordecai on either side. Like super, super cool. Like I thought that was a really, like, there's a story there. Like you can tell the director really thought about where is he positioning his characters in order to further tell the story in a visual way. I just love that. For my brain, that makes me very happy. And then special effects wise, I just thought this was so clever for a live performance to do this. So in the beginning of the musical, it's like you're opening a storybook. So in the beginning of the musical, you hear Esther's voice and she's saying, well, I can't remember the exact lines, but basically it was like, once upon a time in a land far, far away. Like, it's not the actual lines, but they'll have the curtains before they open up to the whole stage. They'll have this scroll that you open up, and it kind of shows like the text of her lines, and it's almost like she's reading to you. And then once she gets to the end of her lines and the curtains open up, the king and everybody else will like slowly like come into the stage. And it just felt like you were opened up into a fairy tale world. That's what it felt like. And then at the end of the show, then the curtains come down, the screen comes down, and then we are shown the scroll again. And then I don't remember the lines again, but it's like, and they lived happily ever after, the end, that kind of thing. And then the scrolls would close, and then the story's over. The book is over. You read the last page. It's time for the show to be done. Like, I just thought that was so cute and so cool of them to do. But there's also one special effect. There's one little special effect that I thought was so ingenious. I believe it's when Mordecai is talking about the Jews' history of Haman's people and why and how they're enemies. On the castle, they'll have, while he's talking about it, there'll be fog coming out. And then you see this snake, slithering in the castle, and then once it gets to the top, then they show like drawings of people or trees or whatever. And like the snake will like eat them, and like he's telling the story about the Jews and their history. I just thought that was the coolest thing. It wasn't just actors talking. You had to kind of try to imagine it in your head. Like you visually got to see what he was talking about. There was a visual interpretation of what Mordecai was talking about in his lines, and you got to see that on stage, but in such a clever, cool way that I just never thought about, So anyways, visually appealing, so beautiful. The sets were constantly moving, constantly changing. It felt like choreography, every single scene transition. There was sets being pulled in and pulled out. There was curtains being brought down, brought up. There was even like lights on the ceilings above you in the audience, and they would come down and come up. Like, it was just so, I'm like a broken record right now, but I'm so happy. Another thing though that was interesting that is faithful to the Bible, but it just never really clicked with me, and kind of made me think about the story a bit more. Esther in Queen Esther is not in Queen Esther the musical very much. She's not in her own musical that much. In the first act, she's in the musical quite a bit, but then in the second act, she's not really in there until halfway through Act 2, I don't think. Like, Act 2 is more about Mordecai and Haman. I just thought that was super interesting to me. I was just like, okay, I remember during the beginning of Act 2, I was like, where's Esther? This is her story. This is her book. Like, where is she at? And you don't see her until way later. Maybe that's one of the reasons why she didn't have her own song, because she's not in there that often. I don't know. It sometimes felt like the king's mother had more singing lyrics than Esther did, you know? Even Haman's wife, I felt like I saw her more often than Esther. But maybe that's just because it's my first showing of the musical. I'm not sure. It just felt like I didn't get to know Esther that much. But the thing is that in the Bible, it's the same way. Like, Esther has all this stuff in the beginning of the book. And then it becomes about Mordecai and Haman's issues, you know? But so they're following the Bible. But I guess for some reason, I just didn't realize how Esther's not really in her story as much as I thought she was. I don't know. I just felt like I didn't get to know Esther that well in the musical. I felt like, really, I got to know Mordecai more than I did Esther, which is fine. I love Mordecai, so not a big deal. But it was just interesting. She's the main character and the title character of her own musical, and yet I felt like I got to know Mordecai and Haman more than I did Esther. Another thing I realized is the king is not very attractive. Not the actor. I don't mean the actor. The actor, he's great. He was awesome. The guy that played the king, fantastic. Great actor. It's not him. It's the character he's playing. I realize how the king is just not a great character. Like, man, he's got some anger issues. Like, and he yells like half the time, and he's just not attractive. You know, because sometimes Esther is created to be like this love story almost, which I'm not sure is really accurate, because basically Esther was forced to marry the king, you know? I'm not sure there was a lot of consent there. I mean, I have no idea. Maybe scholars can prove me wrong. Maybe they've done a lot of research and found out that Esther and the king did have a good romantic relationship. But like, she was kind of just forced to be by his side. The relationship between the king and Esther wasn't really there. Obviously, it's shown in some parts in Act 1, and in Act 2, we got to see some of their relationship, but like, he's just kind of an angry, drunk dude that has some issues. Like, he's not very smart. I felt like this king was just not attractive and just very unintelligent. I think the king's servant that was next to him was much more intelligent and much more aware of what was going on than the actual king did half the time. Like, even like the king and Esther have a romance song together, like an actual full-length romantic song together. So at least that's one full-length song. And it was great. It actually reminded me of Tangled for some reason. And it was a great song, but I don't know, like, I was just like, Esther, why are you attracted to this man? I just didn't buy the whole romance thing, and it kind of made me realize how unattractive the king is, and that Esther is just kind of forced into being queen and being by his side. And so it's not, the story's not really about romance. This is not a romantic story. So yeah, everything was just so good, so beautiful. I loved it so much that I bought a DVD. I bought a DVD of Esther at the concession stand or gift shop or whatever you call it, just because I was just like, I need this, I need to have this. And it has special features on the back. There's some fun bonus stuff in there, and I'm so excited to watch it and to learn how they created Esther. Esther is just such a good story. And Esther as a character, I just adore her character. I think her bravery and her courage is something to admire about. Just a fantastic musical. If you have not seen it, go see it. It was so worth the Branson trip. Like, that was the best thing that we did this last weekend with the film festival. So incredible. Like, I want to go see it again so badly.